This one's from PCGamer.com from Fraser Brown. Let me turn my night mode back on here as well. Blinding myself over here. I've got a bright ass light right here. I've got a bright ass light right there. I can't have my screen be a bright ass light as well. Anyway, this is from Fraser Brown. It says Fortnite continues to be catnip for lawyers. This time finding itself targeted by a Montreal legal firm that's requested authorization for a class action lawsuit on behalf of parents of 2 children who are allegedly addicted to the Battle Royale. Calyx Legal says it was contacted by parents who claimed that their children had become dependent on the game, which they would not have let them play had they realized there was a risk. The firm compared Fortnite to cocaine and tobacco, claiming that Epic, quote, knowingly put on the market a very, very addictive game which is also geared towards youth, end quote. It believes the case has the same legal basis as a 2015 class action lawsuit against tobacco companies for not informing customers about the danger to their health. Earlier this year, the World Health Organization officially recognized gaming disorder as a disease, a decision that's brought up in the authorization request, which also alleges that Epic hired psychologists and, quote, really dug into the human brain and they really made the effort to make it as addictive as possible, end quote. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I think I'm going to do something I don't normally like to do, and that is kind of straddle the line here. I want to speak first and foremost very harshly to any parent who believes that this is out of the purview of things that they can take care of and handle. Kids, and it doesn't say in this article how old these children are, but kids, if given unfettered access to technology, regardless of if it is social media, if it is playing games on their phone, if it is watching Netflix, will not be able to self-regulate. And so parents are the first people who need to be responsible for setting limits on their kids. When I was a kid, I played video games all the fucking time, but I remember there came a time where my parents would come downstairs and take the controller away from me, make me go play outside, go do some chores, and I could come back to it later after I had done the things I was expected to do. I wasn't allowed to let my homework go by. So I am not sympathetic towards this idea that these kids likely just had unlimited access to Fortnite. Like, there are things you have to have in order to play this game. You have to have internet, you have to have a device to be able to play it on, and those things are very easy to limit access to in a home. Whether it be your parental locks, whether it's just turning the fucking internet off, whether it's taking a phone away. Like, there are things that you can do, and in order for it to get as bad as they're saying it got, that they are so dependent on it that it's like cocaine or tobacco, there was a lapse in judgment as a parent that took place there. And I know I'm speaking on this as somebody who is not a parent, but I don't think it takes a genius to say, if you don't want your kid to be addicted to some form of technology, limit their fucking access to the technology. However, I think the scope of the argument gets a little out of bounds when it starts talking about cocaine, and I think that this pretty much sums up my official view.
And Louis Volpe.
I love their breadsticks.
Oh, their breadsticks are like crack.
I love when people say like crack, who've obviously never done crack.
The breadsticks are like what then? Ryan, what can I use?
I don't know, something from your world. The breadsticks are like scrapbooking.
You're right. No, I'm a middle-class fraud.
Shh, okay.
There we go. That's what it is. Fortnite is like scrapbooking, guys. It's like scrapbooking. However, I do think this, and this is something that we rail on a lot when we're talking about these on PvA radio especially, is that I do think that there is a disconnect between what parents understand about games and the way that these games are being designed. I mean, log into any mobile game. I've been playing Call of Duty Mobile on my phone. And I'm not normally a mobile game guy, and it's because I get just sick of being constant. Like, I was talking to Larry about it today. I was like, you should download it and play it. He was like, is it typical mobile gaming stuff? I was like, yeah. I mean, half the tutorial is spent teaching you how to half the tutorials teaching you how to spend money with the game, but from a gameplay perspective, it's fun. But you log in, and that's truly the case. Like, they're teaching you how to spend money. It is so quick and easy to jump in and out of. That was the same thing that happened to me with Gears Pop. I had to delete Gears Pop off my phone because it was just too easy to jump in and out of. Games only took like 2 or 3 minutes. Call of Duty, it only takes about 5 or 6 minutes. And I don't think that parents understand the second part of this statement, not the cocaine and crack thing, but the whole, like, these games are being designed to prod at a certain place in your psyche in order to make these games as profitable as possible. And I think within that, game makers do have a responsibility to communicate the risks. And I know that cuts the legs directly out from their bottom line. But Fortnite needs to do a better job in game of giving parents the ability to limit access to the game on an account. And there are going to be kids who know how to circumvent those things always, but having those options there, I think, is would safeguard Fortnite against these. Not that I think that Fortnite needs my advice to save them. Mad Brock says, I get my scrapbooking on every day. That's right. Right before a big work meeting, man, just got to get that scrapbooking in, get hype. Get hype, baby. I love when people say something's like crack when they've clearly never done crack. Oh, man. I love when people compare Fortnite to cocaine when they have clearly never done cocaine. Not that I've ever done cocaine. Roy Speedrun says, I have a much bigger problem with shit Breakpoint is pulling than I do Fortnite's model. I mean, isn't it kind of obvious that games would be designed to be addictive? Now, I have issues with what Breakpoint is doing in a different regard. I think that one of the things that Fortnite does and that mobile games do such a good job of is incentivizing you to constantly be engaged with the game in one way, shape, or form, to the point where you feel like you're falling behind in some sort of artificial way if you don't play the game. And look, I've got a, how old am I? I'm 29. So my nephew is 9. He's 20 years younger than me. I've got a 9-year-old nephew who loves Fortnite. And when he comes to my house, he knows, like, yeah, dude, you can get on the Switch and play. You can get on my PC and play. But I'm not his dad, His dad, on the other hand, is like, look, you can only play X amount of time. If I see you're getting to be a certain way with it or demanding to play it constantly, I'm going to take it away from you. And he has other healthy hobbies. He likes to draw. He likes to be creative in other ways. Oh shit, my Chrome just crashed, dude. Okay, I'll get back to my tangent here in a second. Let me finish this point. I think the point is, though, that Fortnite is designed in such a way not just to be fun, but to artificially create engagement with its players in a way that I don't think parents are necessarily aware of. Now, I think it is within the responsibility of a parent to understand those things. And Larry is really good about this, really good about talking about this. So Larry's a youth minister, and he hosts a class every, I don't know if he does every 6 months, every year, how often he does it. But he basically just explains to parents, like, what things are. Like, hey, your kid is probably really into Snapchat. Let me just explain what that is. And here are some of the risks in this, but here are some of the benefits in it and good things that can come from it. Let me inform you about Instagram. Here are the new things that are coming out with Facebook and with different kinds of messengers. And and Larry's a parent of 2 kids as well. And he is very good about, like, just setting up these boundaries to say, before my kid can interact with these things, I want to first understand what those things are. And I think that is within the scope of the responsibilities of a parent. Roy Speedrun says, I played Clash of Clans for like 3 years. I could have paid to get ahead, but I had no problem grinding. At some point, we can't be holding the consumer's hands. It's the parents' jobs, not Epic's. I totally agree with that. And that's how I kick the whole thing off. I think it is within the responsibility of the parent to set these limits. But I do think that Epic could avoid a lot of the backlash that they seem to be receiving. What? Roy Speedrun. with the 5 months. Kaffa, baby. Thank you so much, my dude, my homie. If you have not already, go check out Roy Speedrun. He got back to streaming this weekend playing some Apex Legends. I won't lie to you, Roy Speedrun. Was I sitting in the bath while I was watching you pwn some noobs in Apex? Yeah, I was. Sue me. But yes, I do think that Epic could avoid a lot of this if they communicated a little more clearly as to some of these risks, especially if gaming disorder is going to continue to be something that is used in these cases. I mean, I think that is, I'm no lawyer, right? I'm just a small town marketing manager, no lawyer. But I do think that if there is a legitimate recognized disease that is attached to these things, there will become regulations, and it comes back to the just a small town scrapbooker, as Mad Brock says in the chat. It's the same thing we've been saying about just loot box in general. It's like somebody is going to regulate this shit. It can either be you, or it can be somebody who you definitely don't want meddling in this shit. And so if Fortnite really wants to get ahead of this, because this has been the dominant conversation about this game for the last year and a half at the very least. And so I think it is within Fortnite's best interest to keep the pressure off of them to just say, hey, look, we are adding in parental controls for parents to, on an account basis, be able to limit their kids' time with this game. Hey, we've released a companion app where you can, control your kid's account from that device and limit their access. Like, I think it would be in Fortnite's best interest just to be able to say, come to these and say, look, we are taking the necessary steps to try to avoid these things. But yes, I agree with you, Roy Speedrun. It's on the parents. Roy Speedrun says, but I think it's silly to say this is a Fortnite issue when all games are designed to be addictive. I mean, a game that doesn't keep you playing isn't designed well, right? And that's totally true. But there's an argument to be made about a lot of games in that they have an end. Whereas Fortnite and a lot of other games similar to Fortnite are just never-ending grinds. You mentioned Clash of Clans, which I'm sure is the same way, never-ending grind. It is Fortnite's issue because they have the main stage, and I think when you have the main stage in an industry like this, you set the pace. And you don't see these articles being written about Apex Legends. You don't see them being written about Call of Duty. You don't see them being written about Clash of Clans. You can play Fortnite on everything now. So it's dominated the conversation for console, for PC, for mobile, for iPad. Literally anything that you can play on, it's Fortnite. And so I think it is Fortnite's issue, just in the sense that their popularity has put them at center stage for it to set the pace. But again, I don't think, legally speaking, I mean, it is the parents' responsibility. Like, if a kid got addicted to cocaine or scrapbooking, we wouldn't be going to obviously we would try to find the drug dealer, or we'd go try to shut down Joanne Fabrics. But at the end of the day, we would go to the parent and be like, well, how the fuck did your kid get cocaine? Especially at the age we're likely talking about with Fortnite. 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. Like, just take the goddamn power cord, man. It's not hard. Roy Speedrun says, fair enough. I mean, I don't really care about Fortnite in 2019, but I don't think they deserve to get crucified either. Epic is so smart with what they made. And I'm not suggesting being crucified. I just think that somebody is going to step in to regulate this shit. And it's either going to be you self-regulating yourself. It's either going to be you self-regulating, or somebody you want absolutely nowhere near your product meddling in it with regulation. It's the same thing we saw with the ESA being like, well, we're going to start requiring publishers within, or the ESA bringing publishers together, and the publishers making a pledge that, like, we're going to start publishing our drop rates for different kinds of items. Because the ESA knew, like, if we don't start doing shit about this, a government's going to get involved, and we're going to start having to answer to people we don't want to answer to. And so if Fortnite's starting to feel the heat on these things, and there seems to be some viability to these arguments, which who knows anymore, I just think it's within their best interest to try to get out ahead of it and be proactive. Good discussion. Roy Speedrun says, yeah, I see that happening soon, to be honest. Between this and violent games being the problem, I kind of worry about what we will see in gaming. Here's the great thing about the violent games discussion is the conversation's come and gone. I mean, the Supreme Court has already weighed in and said that video game design is free speech, is protected speech. The loot boxes and the addictiveness of games, I think, are going to be something that is coming down the pipeline. Yeah, I can't even remember, Roy Speedrun, when the Supreme Court weighing in on video games was. It was a long time ago, I think. I think it was like back when the original Doom was out. Let's see. Supreme Court violent video games. It was Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association. Oh, this was not that long ago. This was in 2011. Is a landmark case by the Supreme Court of the United States that struck down a 2005 California law banning the sale of certain violent video games to children without parental supervision. In a 7-2 decision, the court upheld the lower court's decision and nullified the law, ruling that video games were protected speech under the First Amendment as other forms of media. So I'm not worried on that front, but I do think that companies are starting to feel the heat when it comes to loot boxes and when it comes to addictiveness in games. I think, especially as we get the World Health Organization kind of being cavalier, I think, with their inclusion of video game addiction in, I can't remember what their book is called, but I thought it was a little rash and cavalier for them to do that. And I think we talked about that when that story broke. But as long as that exists, I think people are going to try to find legs to stand on to, like you said earlier, Roy Speedrun, point the finger. We've gotten super good at that.